Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. You know, when we think about ancient civilizations, we often marvel at their monuments, their art, their cultures. But have you ever stopped to think about their doctors? I mean, these were people who, for the most part, were working with limited technology, and yet they made some pretty incredible discoveries about the human body and how to heal it. In this video, we're going to take a trip back in time and explore 10 ancient medical practices that you might be surprised to learn actually worked. Buckle up, because some of these are truly out of this world. Let's kick things off with something sweet and sticky, honey. Now, you might be thinking, honey? For medicine? The ancient Egyptians were way ahead of the game using honey for medicinal purposes. Modern science backs them up. Honey is a natural antibacterial and antifungal agent, thanks to its high sugar content and an enzyme called glucose oxidase, which produces hydrogen peroxide. The ancient Egyptians used honey to treat wounds, burns, and skin infections. Honey is still used in modern medicine today, particularly in wound care. Manuka honey from New Zealand is renowned for its potent antibacterial properties. Doctors use it to treat chronic wounds and diabetic ulcers. So next time you reach for that jar of honey, remember, it's an ancient medical marvel. Now, this next one is not for the faint of heart. We're talking about trepanation, the practice of drilling holes in the skull. I know, it sounds absolutely nuts, right? This surgical procedure dates back thousands of years and was practiced worldwide. Trepanation was performed with surprising skill and precision. Skulls show signs of healing, meaning patients survived and lived for years. Reasons varied, from curing headaches to releasing evil spirits. Today, neurosurgeons perform craniotomies to relieve brain pressure. It's amazing our ancestors performed such complex brain surgeries with basic tools. Let's talk about pain relief. We all experience it, and for centuries, people have sought ways to alleviate it. Long before aspirin hit the shelves, there was willow bark. This natural remedy was a staple in ancient medicine, particularly in ancient Greece and among Native American tribes. They chewed on willow bark or brewed it into a tea to treat headaches, fever, and inflammation. And you know what? It actually worked. Little did they know, willow bark contains a compound called salicin, which is a chemical precursor to, you guessed it, aspirin. In the 19th century, scientists finally isolated salicin from willow bark and figured out how to synthesize it, leading to the development of aspirin as we know it today. Isn't it fascinating how nature often holds the key to powerful medicines? Willow bark is a perfect example of how ancient wisdom can pave the way for modern medical breakthroughs. So next time you pop an aspirin, remember the ancient healers who relied on the power of willow bark to ease their aches and pains. Okay, this next one might make your skin crawl a bit, but trust me, it's got a fascinating history. I'm talking about leeches. You know, those slimy, blood-sucking worms that seem straight out of a horror movie? Well, believe it or not, leeches have been used in medicine for centuries, dating back to ancient Egypt. They were a key part of a practice called bloodletting, which was based on the belief that removing excess blood could cure a variety of ailments. Now, bloodletting might sound a bit out there, and to be honest, it often was. But leeches themselves have some pretty remarkable properties. You see, they produce a substance called hirudin, which is a powerful anticoagulant. That means it prevents blood from clotting. And guess what? Modern medicine has found a use for this unique ability. Today, leeches are still used in certain medical procedures, particularly in reconstructive surgery, and to treat conditions where blood flow is compromised. They're like little natural blood thinners. So while you might not want to find one clinging to your ankle anytime soon, leeches have earned their place in the fascinating history of medicine. Here's a familiar one: garlic. This pungent little bulb has been a staple in kitchens and medicine cabinets for centuries. The ancient Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans, they all loved their garlic. They used it for everything from boosting energy levels to treating infections. And they weren't wrong. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, which has antibacterial, antiviral, and even antifungal properties. Modern science has confirmed what our ancestors knew all along. Garlic is good for you. Studies have shown that garlic can help boost the immune system, lower blood pressure, and even reduce cholesterol levels. So, add some extra garlic to your next meal, and know that you're not just adding flavor, you're tapping into an ancient health remedy that stood the test of time. This one might make you squirm a little, but stick with me. Maggot therapy, yes, you heard that right, using maggots for medical purposes, has been around for centuries. It might sound gross, but it's actually quite ingenious. Ancient cultures observed that wounds infested with maggots often healed faster and with fewer infections. Turns out, maggots are nature's little surgeons. They have a healthy appetite for dead and infected tissue, effectively cleaning out wounds that could otherwise become gangrenous. Now, I know what you're thinking, but before you swear off hospitals forever, maggot therapy has made a comeback in modern medicine. It's carefully controlled using sterilized maggots, and it's proving to be a valuable tool for treating chronic wounds, especially in cases where conventional treatments haven't worked. So while it might not be the most glamorous form of treatment, maggot therapy is a fascinating example of how ancient practices can still offer valuable insights to modern medicine. Chapter 7. Silver, it's shiny, it's precious, and it turns out, it's also a powerful antimicrobial agent. Ancient civilizations, like the Phoenicians and the Greeks, were onto something when they used silver to store water and prevent spoilage. They didn't fully understand the science behind it, but they knew it worked. Today, we know that silver ions can disrupt the cellular processes of bacteria and viruses, effectively killing them. It's like a microscopic force field against germs. And it's not just ancient history. Silver is still used in modern medicine today. You'll find it in wound dressings, catheters, and even medical implants to prevent infection. So that silver spoon you were gifted as a baby? It might just have more practical uses than you thought. Let's travel to ancient China for this next one, acupuncture. This practice has been around for over 2,000 years and involves inserting thin needles into specific points on the body. The idea is to stimulate energy flow, or qi, and restore balance to the body. Now, while the concept of qi might seem a bit abstract, there's growing evidence to suggest that acupuncture can have real, measurable effects on the body. Modern research has shown that acupuncture can stimulate the release of endorphins, those feel-good chemicals in your brain that act as natural painkillers. It can also improve blood circulation and reduce inflammation. So, while the ancient Chinese might not have fully understood the mechanisms behind it, they were definitely onto something with acupuncture. Okay, this next one is definitely more on the weird side of ancient medicine. We're talking about crocodile dung as a form of contraception. Yes, you heard that correctly. The ancient Egyptians, for all their wisdom, had some rather, shall we say, creative ideas about family planning. Now, there's no scientific evidence to suggest that crocodile dung would have been effective as a contraceptive. In fact, it probably had the opposite effect, potentially increasing the risk of infection. But hey, you can't fault them for trying, right? It just goes to show that even brilliant minds can come up with some pretty out there ideas. Thankfully, we've come a long way since then in the world of contraception. This last one is a bit of a somber note to end on, but it's a crucial part of medical history. I'm talking about lobotomies. Developed in the early 20th century, this surgical procedure involved severing connections in the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for personality, decision-making, and social behavior. It was initially hailed as a breakthrough in the treatment of severe mental illness, but it came with a hefty price. Lobotomies often resulted in profound personality changes, leaving patients emotionally blunted, childlike, and sometimes unable to care for themselves. Thankfully, the development of antipsychotic medications in the 1950s provided a far more humane and effective way to treat mental illness, rendering lobotomies largely obsolete. From honey to trepanation to, well, crocodile dung, we've journeyed through some of the most fascinating and sometimes bizarre practices of ancient medicine. And while we might chuckle at some of these remedies today, it's important to remember that they were often born out of necessity and a genuine desire to heal. Our ancestors were incredibly resourceful, observant, and yes, sometimes misguided in their quest to understand the human body and combat disease. But their efforts laid the groundwork for modern medicine, and we continue to learn from their successes and their failures. So the next time you reach for that bottle of aspirin or marvel at the complexity of brain surgery, take a moment to appreciate the long and winding road that medical science has traveled, paved in part by the wisdom, ingenuity, and yes, even the mistakes of those who came before us.